action people, followers, collectors. It is episode 126 today. I'm going to call it 6 Degrees of Separation, which, if you've ever heard that expression, it used to be organically that six people in distance, and that was before social media, back when we didn't have the internet. What? Can you even imagine? I can. I miss it. So 6 degrees, you knew somebody who knew somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody who knew somebody. And you would always, at least they used to say in the Philadelphia area, and I was a kid, it was like, oh, you're connected to somebody like in Russia, like somebody on the other side of the world during the Cold War. That was quite the thing to say. Or that you were connected to somebody famous, or that you were connected to every other person in the world by 6 degrees of separation only, not any more, any less. Now, according to Facebook, it turns out that they're like 4.5, probably because of Facebook, because everybody's looking everybody up. But that wasn't an option back then. So let's stick to six because that's what it was. Now it's probably even easier because people can, contact famous people directly. It doesn't mean they're going to answer, but, they could. So we didn't have that option. You used to have to write letters and be like, dear so and so, I heart you. Please write back. And you might get like, a signed picture, but you don't know if that person did that or they did that themselves. Sometimes they write a letter, but again, you don't know if they did that or not. Everybody kind of handled their own fan mail, but there was fan mail, and that was the thing. Quite exciting if you get a letter. So 6 degrees of separation, which by the way would go on to be a movie with like Donald Sutherland and Stockard Channing, Will Smith, a young Will Smith, and Anthony Michael Hall. Very unusual cast of characters. Kind of weird, worth watching, but that was a movie version of it because it's amazing who they end up knowing and who knew who and whatever as a result of 6 degrees of separation. But they also made the game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, which we used to play. That came out in the early '90s, and it's worth playing if Kevin Bacon was like in everything. Also a Philadelphia guy and very big into the arts. And it's him and his brother, the Bacon brothers, and of course he went on to be a famous actor in like everything. And if you trace, I think that you have to get back to Kevin Bacon, but if you trace Kevin Bacon's whereabouts in certain movies, he's acted amongst so many different actors and people that you would try and figure out by way of what movie um, how to get back to Kevin Bacon. So fun facts. Anyway, the whole point here is distance and how distance isn't as big as you might think. People say, "Oh, small world," and it's true. It's funny because one thing that I have known, I started kind of tracking these just people I knew. Now, this isn't to say that you can't meet a famous person, or you go to a concert and you wait to see them or you stand outside a Broadway door. That's a different story. That's just you went to go see a person, you're a fan, and you happen to maybe go to a Comic Con or something and paid to get in line to see them, or, that's different. That's organic because you made that happen, not because it was happenstance. These are kind of weird happenstantical things that have occurred that I actually can't believe. And they're all real. So, and you may or may not have heard of some of these people depending on your age, but I'm just going to start with in the order I wrote them down. So, so I've been an educator for 29 years, and one of my first school nurses that I worked with grew up in New Jersey, and she went to school, and forgive me because I don't remember the exact place, but she went to school with Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise was in her grade, and Tom Cruise's real name is Tom Maypother, but apparently he had a falling out with his father, and I'm sure you can read all this now and whatever. But Cruise was his mother's maiden name and his middle name for real, so he really is Tom Cruise, and he dropped the Maypother when the dad left, and apparently he was a very quiet guy in high school, kind of kept to himself. And he did do a couple of plays and things, but wasn't really the beefed up actor that you see now. So she knew of him. I can't say they were close, but she came in and was telling us that story one day. And that was just one of those crazy things where, in 2 degrees of separation, obviously I didn't know Tom Cruise, but, it was a connection that was pretty close. So I thought that was really interesting. He's probably the biggest hitter I have on the list. Um, Being a Philadelphia resident and having grown up with a lot of now granted they were before my time, but a lot of the doo-wop artists, Dion and the Belmonts, they were all like from Philadelphia area. Hall and Oates is from here later on, and that's just, where they grew up and whatnot. But Bill Haley and the Comets were actually out of Chester. I went to school at Widener in Chester, and that was a port city at the time back in the day, and now they call it a metropolis. They call it mini metropolis. I find that funny, but it is on the water. And he used to gig there. He did Rock Around the Clock, if you don't know. And in the 50s, he was very famous, and he came out of that area. So he used to gig in that area all the time. And there's very many people that in that doo-wop scene are connected to him by way of just playing in different bands in Chester. And they range from like Buddy Holly to Chuck Berry to all sorts of people just because of the connection to doo-wop. But again, Dion and the Belmonts as well. My own personal connection, and God, I think it would be my fourth cousin. My mother's cousin, her first, is third cousins, so I guess that would make me fourth or fifth with Fabian. Unfortunately, she has passed away. So, but she used to call him on the phone. Fabian was again one of those South Philly performers. Turn Me Loose, one of his songs, and he was a Philly doo-wop guy. So that was an actual personal connection that we were tied to. And I never met him and saw him, but I believe my mother had him when she was young. And again, it was like many degrees of separation, but by actual cousins. And she used to call him up. Her cousin Lenore used to call him up. Got to remember Lenore because she had that old Navy lady look. She had the big glasses and the poofy hair. Very funny. Acted like that too. And she was like, I gotta call my cousin and tell him I'm gonna go see him. And they would still gig very often. Which, speaking of the music industry, one of my friends from a local high school, I was in Catholic school my whole life, and she was in public school. Her stepfather was one of the singers from Earth, Wind, and Fire. So they would go gig every now and again, and we'd see them all dressed up coming into the Wawa to pick up a drink or something afterwards. It was kind of funny. So, again, if I didn't know this friend and that friend didn't know, wasn't related to him, that's just another crazy 6 degree separation situation. That same friend that I grew up with would grow up to be the personal assistant to the CEO of Comcast, his wife, actually. So Brian Roberts' wife and she was his personal assistant for a very long time. So, little company you may have heard of called Comcast. So that's kind of funny. And when we did, her wedding, we were at her wedding. Here comes the CEO of Comcast and his wife. Like, who would have thought that? So pretty normal people, I might add. You wouldn't think that, but actually, like, drive a Ford and live in a normal house. So fun facts. Go, what's that guy, Warren Buffett? Yeah, they eat chicken nuggets every day. Very similar. Not quite that bad, but very similar. My mom and dad, when they got married, back then it was a band. You didn't have a DJ. And their brand new starting out young singer was a guy named Frankie Avalon. And who knew that he would go on to be as famous as he did? For those of you that don't know or are trying to place him, Frankie Avalon was the singer in Grease, all done up in white. He was the guardian angel that sang Beauty School Dropout, and he also does other songs throughout but that's his big moment, and that's Frankie Avalon. So he actually played my mom and dad's wedding before he was terribly famous. So fun facts. I went on to work with a paraprofessional at school, and he is a drummer. And he's actually since left to go back to his band. He had a band that was up and coming, and forgive me because I really don't know the name of it. And they did a couple of cuts, and they were trying to make things work. And he is a drummer, so he was obsessed with other drummers. And it turned out that my student at the time, not that he was helping me out with, but a different student, is the goddaughter to Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters. So who knew? And I spent the year trying to see if I could get them together because he worshipped this guy that I worked with, like worshipped him, and I thought, oh, maybe they could chat, but never quite happened. But I think he sent him drumsticks or something, which was really nice. Back in the day when I was in college, I knew this guy Chuck that had a wife who was an artist, and she actually did very many pieces for me for of the family and portraits and of the dog and everything. And she had grown up in Indiana, in a small town, and that's all she ever said. She was very quiet. Well, it turned out that she went to school with John Cougar Mellencamp, who, as we all know, really was John Mellencamp and changed to John Cougar. Back in the small town, hence the name of the song. And she got talking about it one day when I went over there to drop off some pictures that she was rendering for us. So there's a million of these, and the list goes on. But it is funny to see a 6 degrees of separation. They're just my personal ones that I know of. I'm sure you have them if you look hard enough. And sometimes you just never know, like who's around or who answered what or who was in the right place at the wrong time. And again, that's not to say you're not going to actively seek somebody, or you found out like I'm outside the Philadelphia area. Wanda Sykes lives in media. Who knew? And I've bumped into her a few times. That's just coincidence, but there's people in places that you just never know, and who knows who, and that yields whatever relationship that. Then they told two friends, and they saw so and so, and that guy's connected to this person, and that girl told her, and next thing you know, it's you've got your 6 degrees of separation, or Kevin Bacon, depending on how you look at it. But I'm always fascinated by stuff like that because you just never know who's where. I'm probably forgetting a million of them, but those are the ones that I know of that I could speak to, and I thought they were pretty funny because most people were. Oh, really? Yeah, oh, yeah. So that's that. So look to your surroundings and see who you might be near and not know. If you like what you heard today, then check out eclecticcollectionpodcast.com or follow us on your preferred platform. I'm Terry Tenaglia. Thanks for listening.